Okay, according to my status things on my window here, I'm live and you guys should be able to hear me in about a second. So we can get started here in a couple minutes. Just let me know, comment and say hi if you can hear me. Welcome to everyone from all over the country. I'll just hit my record button here as well. Okay, come on. Oh, I'm having an issue. Just give me a second. Okay, that was weird. Okay, well, I think it's working. You guys can hear me? That's great. You can see me. Here I am. Hi. Welcome. It's a nice, relaxed day here in Dawson Creek. The Canadian Thanksgiving. We are already all full of turkey. We had our meal on Saturday, and then we had more turkey on Sunday with our church group. So that was pretty special. And yeah, great food. And yeah, I'm hearing a few comments from everybody. I know it's not Thanksgiving where you're at, and apparently it's more of a North American tradition to have Thanksgiving, which I think is kind of interesting. For me, I always feel like as a parent, you're scrambling at the last minute to try to think of ways to encourage your kids to be thankful. And of course, we don't want to do that just on a holiday. That's more of an everyday kind of thing we're trying to teach them. So anyhow, we're going to move right into our lesson today. And like I promised you, we're going to talk today about developing your personal painting style. And this is something that I don't actually usually talk about very much. I kind of gloss over it. And I'll explain to you why I don't spend a lot of time talking about how to find your style. And yet I think it's something that can be very useful for us to talk about today and maybe help you to feel a little more confident that you don't have to spend a ton of time focusing on it either, but it will develop as you build your skills in watercolor. And I actually printed off, I wrote some notes. Sometimes I like to wing it, but I really felt like I wanted to be organized in how I shared this. And then after I've done my little speechifying, shared what I've thought about developing a personal style, then we'll go in. I have a little bit to show you with some painting as well. So if you're waiting to see me get my brushes out, that's going to happen too. And I do have a bit of a cold, so I'll try to mute the mic if I have to blow my nose or anything. And so you guys aren't disgusted. And yeah, there's good fluidity and bad fluidity, if you know what I mean. So I have a couple of questions, and these are, when we talk about developing a personal style, we want to make sure we mean the same thing. So we're saying, what is a personal style? And then what is your personal style? Do you have a style already, or is it something you have to find? And how do you know when you have it? And so, yeah, let's talk about that. What is a personal painting style? What does a style look like? And I think that a great way to think about that is to think about some artists that that you can instantly identify when you see their painting. I'd love to hear from you. Whose painting do you see and you instantly know that artist painted it? For me, one artist that immediately comes to mind is Thomas Kincaid. He made a career out of painting a very specific style of painting. Another artist, we all notice and recognize work by the famous Impressionist painters. Monet's water lilies, he's famous for those. And then Picasso, again, we have a certain style in mind when we hear the name Picasso. So there are artists who are known for their very distinctive styles. And I see some comments here. Anna Mason has a beautiful realistic watercolor style. Jean Haynes, I love her style and I do recognize it. In fact, because she teaches, I will often recognize her influence in other students' paintings. And so that's another thing that will happen, is you'll see their influence going through their people that are connected with them. Norman Rockwell, love his work. Always entertained by his illustrative style that always tells a story. Salvador Dali, Anne Blockley, Tony Couch. These are all different. Some are watercolorists, some are not. Different artists that, yeah, we recognize their work. And a lot of times that's because we are familiar with it. If they're an artist that excites you, you're going to be studying their work and it's going to be easier to recognize. So, so the next question is, do you have a style? And is it something inside of you already, or do you need to create it? And if so, how do you create it? How do you develop it? And then how do you know when you have it? And I think these are great questions to ponder. They are things that you can be thinking about. And I think that you can feel confident that you, as you move toward developing your own personal style. And I think that some of style is internal. It's something that's deep inside of you. It comes out in how you move your brush, your body movements, the colors that you love and gravitate towards, the ones that you choose to create your paintings, and then also your most natural tendencies. Even as a beginner, you might have a tendency to paint everything too dark and heavy-handed, or maybe you're the opposite and you paint everything really pale. You know, when you have those tendencies, that's something that's coming out from your personality. And so style can be a lot like your personality. It's not something you choose. If you've ever been an introvert who's wanted to be more outgoing, you'll know what that's like. You try to change your personality and it just doesn't happen that way. But I do think just as we can strengthen our character or strengthen our weaknesses, we can create or form our style through the course of your painting development. And your style is then going to be affected by things like your influences, what you see and take in the world around you, who your role models are, and your decision-making process as you paint. I mentioned the Impressionists a little bit earlier, and the Impressionists, we know most of them, they're in France, they're painting together, they're influencing each other, and it brought about this whole new school of painting out of the Renaissance and being very structured in how you approach painting. So, and we see these guys influencing each other and then taking those influences and creating their own interpretations. So, you know, we're influenced by others. And then, but at the end of the day, you're the one who makes the choices. You choose what you're going to paint, and you choose how you're going to paint it. And when you're learning to paint, as a beginner, you're often going to feel kind of out of control, like you're swept along by the painting to a certain point. And as the painting progresses, you might naturally fall into a habit of overworking or just getting really focused on detail. And so you might be fighting against those tendencies as you build your painting strengths. But every time that you make a decision when you're painting, you are expressing yourself in the painting process as you decide whether to, you know, continue to detail something and how to and when to stop, and how dark to paint it and how much to exaggerate from your photo or whatever. Durdana says also maybe where you place the objects in abstract and the shapes you choose. And painting abstract is a really great way to connect with your personal style because you have nothing guiding you but your own mind, what's in your head. But because that whole decision making while you're painting is expressing yourself in your painting process, it's all part of your style. That means that really no matter what stage you're at when you're learning to paint, your personal style is present as well. And I just realized my mic is really far away from me. I'm going to move it. That was careless. I see this personal style present even when I'm teaching brand new beginners in my studio, which is what I'll be doing tomorrow night. I see it in my online students, and I've had some very new beginners taking my courses, and yet I can instantly recognize who they are before I see their name at the bottom of their painting in the student gallery, which I think is really cool. Often I can recognize which student painted that particular painting because their brush handling, their color choices, and even their strengths and weaknesses show me who they are. And whether they had planned it that way or not, whether they felt like the painting was controlling them or vice versa. So that's one reason that I like to encourage students not to worry too much about your painting style. if it's naturally a part of your nature to paint a certain way, then it's going to naturally develop as you build your technical skills. And since the technical skills, learning how much water to use, growing confident in your brush handling, knowing what technique to use and when, those skills are skills we know that can be developed with commitment and focus as you practice. It makes a lot more sense to me to fix our attention on the technical mastery rather than developing a signature style. Just looking at the comments here as we take a little pause. Dawn asks, do you think that your style as a new artist would be close to that of artwork that you like? So as a new artist, should I lean toward learning how to do watercolor in that artist style? I'm going to address that in just a minute, actually. I see students commenting, I'm detail oriented, I get stuck on overworking. And that's a fairly common thing because, you know, it's very hard when you're fixed on mastering technique to also be focusing your decision making on how to paint something, how to interpret it. And so we tend to just paint what we see and not be able to kind of back away from it and think a little, get in touch with that kind of inner part of us. I should mention as well that if you focus too much of your attention on your style, if you're thinking about that too much, developing a style, developing a signature, it can be kind of damaging, I think. I mentioned Thomas Kinkade earlier as someone who has a very recognizable style, and his style was so recognizable. I'm just trying to see if this is, sorry, I lost my screen and I'm not sure if, did you lose me? Okay. I often wonder with Thomas Kinkade if he ever felt locked into his very specific and recognizable style. You know, did it get boring for him to have to paint in such a predictable way? Did he want to break out and do something completely different? As an artist for myself, I've always felt like I'm continually challenging myself. And so while I do feel like I have a personal style that is very much my own, I would never want to sacrifice my freedom to be trapped into making art that was marketable but didn't excite me. I love this feeling of chasing the next idea, trying to interpret something and say it in a better way, and experimenting as a way of keeping my art fresh and interesting. And I think too that there is a part of me that wants to try new subjects that I might have felt intimidated or nervous to paint before. If I were to label myself as a certain type of painter, I might not feel that same freedom. I do know for myself that I love the loose and fluid style. I'm very attracted to this freedom of expression in painting rather than a strong technical realistic mastery. So I have moved in that direction. But really beyond that, I try very hard not to limit myself. And even though at this time I'm painting exclusively in watercolor, I'm even hesitant to, I mean, I have marketed myself as a watercolor artist, but that doesn't mean that I would say, I'm not ever going to add some mixed media into my painting or whatever. So I want to have a lot of freedom in what I do. And I think that if you're very true to your own personal style, you know, we don't change personalities from day to night. We become different people through our experiences. We change, we become broader, more well-rounded. Have a richer character as we get older, but that doesn't mean we change who we are. So if that makes sense. Just moving on. So what should your attitude be about your style? And I think first of all, I want you to really feel confident that you can and will develop a personal style. And it's going to be a style that you love. And that's the awesome part, is that your personal style should be something that just thrills you and excites you because it's coming from your heart. At the very heart of your desire to paint is a little part of you that sings for joy when you paint from your truest self. And if that sounds too squishy for you, you can think of it more as authenticity of purpose, that you're like a silversmith, you're refining and getting to the purest expression. As you refine your skills, your style is going to become more evident because you will have more of your focus on the decision-making process of how to paint your subject, and you'll be more in control of the decisions you're making. So there's the squishy, huggy version and the little more practical one, just depending on your personality. There are some obstacles that can keep you from developing your own signature style. And I've only got 2 here. There's probably more, but I think these 2 are the most important. Number 1 is fear. And that's that little part of you that thinks, oh, I can't paint that way. That subject's too hard, or nobody's going to understand or like it. If I paint it in that way, I have to stick to maybe a more realistic style. I think this fear can prevent you from tackling subjects that are too difficult. And I think that if a subject, if there's something you want to paint but it seems too hard and scary, then minimize that obstacle by going out there and painting it. I think often we'll put more effort into a difficult subject. We'll plan it better. We'll see a better result because we were more prepared, because we weren't so confident and foolhardy as to just plunge right in. And then I think the other thing that can really be an obstacle is you're overly influenced by any single mentor, subject, or style. So give yourself permission to experiment with different styles and feel free. And I really encourage you to study different artists. Enjoy the work of many different artists. Be broad in your interest range. I admire and love the styles of many artists, and not just the loose painters and not just watercolor artists. And when we lock ourselves into fixing on one person, and we've talked about Jean Haynes because she's so awesome, if I just focus on her work and never study other artists, my work's going to be very derivative of what she does. And I really don't, I don't think that's respectful to her. And I don't think that's respecting my own ability to interpret subjects in my way. So I really try to, have wide influence and study lots of different artists. And it's wonderful that we have the internet now and we can do that. And that means you don't just have to study with one instructor either. I love teaching online. I love the classes that I share with you guys. I feel very confident that they are courses that can help you develop your style, because I very much believe in teaching good decision making as you're painting, not just this is how I do it, but this is how I think about it. And so it's getting into that decision making process that makes you a better personal artist and not just a copyist. Sorry, taking a breath, having a drink. Great questions from everybody. Identifying which style you want can feel like an overwhelming thing. But again, it's that inner part of you that gets really excited, whether it's one little brush stroke in your painting that you just adore. It tells you something about who you are. So I think the best way to develop your style is really through experimentation. Be willing to try different things, try different styles, use different tools, use watercolor in different ways, pull in other mediums, and copy some artists. Be willing to copy. And it can be very interesting to look at what an artist has done and go, how did they do that? And why don't I give it a try? Of course, remember that if you are copying an artist's work, that's just for learning purposes. It should never be sold or exhibited. But if you try a different artist's approaches in a variety of styles, you'll have a better idea of what feels right to you. Like I said, I really admire realistic painters who do this photorealistic stuff, but it really is boring to me. I feel inhibited and locked in when I have a drawing that I have to reproduce. So like I said, I just have learned what gets me excited, and that's the direction I try to go when I'm painting. And that's the other thing you need to do is be aware. Try to be really present in your paintings and listen to that little inner voice as your guide. It's really fun when you make that inner connection, and it almost feels like you have this little partner in crime who really gets you. And I think when I'm painting and I make that connection, it almost feels like cheating when that connection between your heart and your brush is wide open and you're painting from that very true inner place. It's just so exciting and fun. And I never really know when that's going to happen. It's kind of a rare thing, and I think the more you paint, the more likely you are to find that little secret door and just whoosh, out comes all that inner stuff and flowing onto your page, and it's just beautiful and exciting. And I think sometimes a painting can feel more like a battle to kind of try to shut off the conscious mind and reach a little deeper to find that true me. But the chance that it just might happen in this painting session is what keeps me going. It's I'm hoping for that breakthrough. And you put in the hours of where it feels kind of mechanical or not very inspired, because you're hoping for the day when that inner thing shows up and gets involved. I want to encourage you guys to be confident. Your style is happening, whether you know it or not, and you're going to love it because it's going to be the deepest expression of yourself. And because you're continually changing and growing as a human being, you're never going to really feel like you have that personal style pinned down. You get to keep making it fuller and richer and even more like you. And I think that's what makes painting like this wonderful gift that you give yourself. It's not about selling paintings. It's not about winning awards. The true success is when you get that, whatever it is, out on paper and you're like, that is me, you know, that's what I wanted to say. And waiting for that to happen and working towards that, it's really fun and really exciting. So I just want to encourage you guys, it's going to happen. And even if it just happens for a second, it's totally worth it. So that's my little talk for now. I want to just talk for a second about why I teach the way I do. In my online classes at learn.angelafair.com, I have all kinds of courses, and the way I've structured them is very much this idea of being true to your own personal style. There are artists in my community and probably in yours who teach a very rigid step-by-step method where everybody starts with the same colors, mixes them the same way, comes out with almost exactly the same painting at the end of the course. And while I believe that teaching kind of some step-by-step stuff is a really good way to teach technique, it's very important to me to help teach you guys good decision making. So I talk a lot about building good values in your painting, having color harmony, trying to create some rhythm and pattern in your work, and this kind of good decision making that really makes for true and authentic paintings. And that's important to me in all my courses. So keep that in mind if you're looking for instruction. Like I said, step-by-step instruction is really useful for learning technical skills, so you don't get away from it completely, but giving you the tools so that you can make decisions about what your paintings need. That's what gets me really excited, because I really think that's what will grow you as a painter. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to quickly look at the comments and then we'll move right over to my palette. We're already 20 minutes in and we'll just paint for a few minutes quickly here. I've got some colors I want to show you today. Whoops, now I just lost all my comments. Where did I put them? Opened the wrong window. I want to pop up on the screen here, I think I can do it, a painting that was submitted to me from one of my students, Mary Lyons, who painted this inspired by, I believe, my week 1 video lesson where I painted just a loose and quick flower during the lesson. And I just feel free to email me if you're painting along with any of my lessons. If you're taking a class, I'd love to share some student work during my course here. I'm going to pop that up. I'm not sure if my sound might turn off, so I better figure that out. Yeah, here it goes. I just thought that was really beautiful, Mary. Thank you for sharing it with me. I love the fluidity that she's used in her flowers, that combination of yellow and pink, which we talked about in lesson 1. And letting some of that green flow into the flower, letting some of the yellow and pink flow together. And then she's got a beautiful rhythm here as her flowers kind of make a pattern across the paper. So thank you, Mary, for sharing that with us. Moving on to, just to your comments here. Questions about, do I ever get painter's block? One way to avoid painter's block is the more you paint, the more ideas you have, I think. And sometimes having painter's block just means I'm making my paintings too important. Like every painting has to turn out amazing. And maybe I just need to do a stupid painting of, something dumb, whether it's my kid's muddy boots lying in the entryway, or, something that isn't ever going to see the light of day anywhere. Make painting about playing a game with yourself rather than having a product to show people at the end. Mary asks, hi Mary, I just shared your painting. How long did you paint before your personal style began to emerge? And that is a great question. I think I think your personal style is there from the very beginning, but my style really began to change about 4 years ago, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, when I really started to think about what got me really excited as I painted. And I started to spend time looking at more artists' work, going online, looking at different artists, and they inspired me to look more deeply at what gets me excited about painting and start to change my way of painting. Because up until then, I was very much kind of copying reference photos and trying to stay quite realistic, and yet really wasn't very satisfied with that. So it was really exciting to think that I could do what excited me and not worry about whether or not people would understand it. And I love that, when you paint a loose painting, you're trusting your viewer to understand it and to connect with it without you having to spell everything out. More questions. While developing a style, is it important to keep with the same paper and paints? Not at all. Feel free to branch out, try all kinds of different things. You never know what's going to twig and get you really excited and cause you to leap ahead in your painting development. You just don't know. And so it's great to try different things and be experimental. And I think too, there's that idea of, again, not being tied to a product, wanting to, by product I mean a finished, amazing painting that you can frame and show off to the world. It's about just pouring out, you're just experimenting, practicing, pouring out paintings without feeling like they need to be finished or that they need to be great, that you can ruin them. All of those things are going to just build your body of knowledge about what you're capable of. And if we don't experiment and take risks, we're not really going to understand that. Miranda asks if I sell my paintings. Oh, I'm going to give a little advertisement now. Of course I sell my paintings. I do have a few on my website, angelafair.com. Most of the things I post on my Facebook page are also available. And I exhibit them locally in galleries in my community. I don't travel a lot, and so I haven't branched out into galleries across the country or anything like that. But yeah, I love sharing my work. It really feels like a more complete... When I have a great painting, I want to share it with people. And so it's always exciting to do that and to talk about my art and see people's responses. Moving on here. Great comments, everybody. Jean Haynes calls it painting for the bin. Yeah, almost every painting that I do, I try to tell myself, this is just a sketch. I try to trick myself because even if I really want to paint something special that's going to turn out, when I put that kind of pressure on myself to have something amazing come out, I'm probably going to feel really rigid and tight and afraid to make a mistake. So I need to be willing to say, to risk it all to make a great painting, because some of those bold strokes are really what makes paintings great and dynamic. Okay, we're going to move right over to my work surface over here, and I just have to move my camera for that, so just bear with me for a second. Whoosh. Okay, it's almost working. Just get that cord out of the way. And yeah, and I'm going to turn the light on here. And hope that doesn't give us too many shadows. Okay, so I have two palettes here today because I have a color I really want to show you. And then I also want to, there's some paper. This is indigo art paper. I have the wrong link in my video description, and I will change that as soon as the lesson ends, because I was thinking I was going to use my Arches paper today, but then I found this beautiful piece of indigo, and I thought for this color that I'm using today, I want the texture. So first of all, I think we're going to start with just a little bit of neutral here. And which neutral is the question? I think we'll grab this raw sienna. When I was out on my run this morning, I saw this beautiful hawk up on the telephone pole. And I don't have a picture of them, so I'm going to really mess this up. But the cool thing about painting without a reference photo is you're relying on your memory then. And I think that that can be a good way of focusing on what's the most important about your image. So I'm just going to put that little eye there. And he had kind of a dark on his head, and then a white space, and then another dark space. So we'll kind of do that. Let the colors flow a little bit. And then I think his body was something like that. Just winging it. And because I've never painted a hawk before, I know this isn't going to turn out. And so that's very freeing to be able to say, well, it's not going to turn out, so I'm just going to be experimental and know that whatever I do will be better than not having ever painted a hawk at all. I'm using all kinds of beautiful neutrals. This is, let's see, this kind of reddish color is a hematite burnt scarlet. Then over here I've got a burnt sienna. And I've put all my neutrals into one palette together so I can kind of just grab them all easily and work on the neutral end of the spectrum. This is a burnt umber. And maybe we've got to try to get that beak in. Is it be something like that? Look at how that's already a bird. Isn't that amazing? Again, with loose painting, you get that freedom of not having to say everything. And you get to kind of focus on what the painting needs and what colors work for your image. I'm not really touching the eye because I think I want to go in with a lighter color and I don't want the burnt umber to flow into it at this point. I do a little bit of ruffling there. So those are all some beautiful colors, and I almost feel like I should just stop right there. Isn't that, I just think that's really kind of cool, seeing a bird emerge without painting really more than a wing and a part of the head. But we'll go a little further. He's very stripy on the underside, so maybe it's just short little brush strokes that would create that chest. Isn't that kind of special? And as my brush has less paint on it, as I continue to paint, then the colors get a little bit lighter, which could be a useful technique to kind of limit what you're doing. And then his tail came down like so. Make sure I don't go off outside of the video screen here. And a little bit of that burnt sienna, which has got a lovely reddish color. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Just that trying to say as little as possible without overdoing it can be so special. Okay, so I was going to tell you about a color that really I love quite a lot, and it's over here in my palette. You can see this is a very dark section of my palette. I've got a Perylene green, which is a very rich dark green. I've got my Winsor or dioxazine violet, and then this is Daniel Smith's Sodalite Genuine. And I used to keep Payne's Gray in this spot. And you probably know Payne's Gray. It's very rich blue-black. And but this is Sodalite Genuine. And Sodalite Genuine, where am I going to put it now? It goes on very dark. So let's say we want a dark background around our bird. You can see it goes on very dark, almost like black. But if you let it flow, you can see a lot more gray. But Sodalite actually has a blue in it, and it's the blue that gets me really excited because as it dries quite a bit lighter than it goes down. And it starts to have a sedimentary effect where because it's a ground up mineral, it has tiny little granules that will separate as it begins to dry. And so it really, the blues kind of come out and separate from the tone that was a little bit more black, and it gives just this beautiful effect. And I'm kind of feeling a little hesitant to, I have a feeling I'm going to mess up under his beak there if I paint too closely. So I'm going to just stop and not bring my paint right up into that part at this time. I think what I'll do after this lesson is I'll get this to the point where I feel like if I wanted to tighten it up, I would need to study a picture of the bird, and then I'll go find my photos. But if you look at the Sodalite here, as it starts to dry, it's definitely drying lighter, and it's almost got a little bit of like a cornflower blue tint to it, which I think is so pretty. And it has that beautiful whoosh when you touch the paint to the wet paper. It just spreads so beautifully, but it has some amazing texture. And I'm going to try to go right up close to the camera for you guys to see it a little bit better. Can you see that texture there? Isn't that amazing? So the Sodalite Genuine is kind of my new go-to neutral dark, or bluish neutral dark, because it's just such a beautiful hue. And I'm going to put some down there too. And I think here we'll have a tree at some point, but we'll just leave it for now. And so it's just a lot of fun to use because it's got so much kind of complexity to it, you know? Yeah. Okay, so that's as far as I'm going to go on my hawk today, and I'm actually really happy with this. I'm looking forward to comparing it to the photos I took this morning while I was on my run. They're not very good because it was just with my camera or my phone, but I had so much fun just studying this hawk. As I ran down the road this morning, he would sit on the telephone pole until I got just underneath him, and then he would swoop ahead to the next pole and sit there and look at me till I got underneath the pole again, and then off he'd swoop to the next telephone pole. It was just a really cool thing. I think it was a Cooper's hawk, but I can't really be sure. I'm not so good at identifying birds. Okay, oh, everybody's wanting to try it now. That's good to hear. I'm going to keep focused on the painting for just a few minutes. I want to mention some of the other colors I used. Here in my neutrals palette, I had Hematite Burnt Scarlet, which actually I didn't use very much today. The Raw Sienna is kind of the yellower tone. And I like Raw Sienna as a alternative to Yellow Ochre. Yellow Ochre, which actually is in my palette up here in the corner, has a more opaque look. So if you're wanting a transparent kind of buttery yellow, I would recommend the Raw Sienna. The Burnt Sienna was that beautiful rich red that we used here, and then I used some Burnt Umber as well for the darker, kind of a more true, kind of a, not quite a chocolatey brown, but just a really nice brown. And I used all of those and let them kind of mingle together on my painting. I'd love to build up a few darks in here and get the texture of his feathers just a little bit more. Figure out that perfect shape of his kind of under his beak there, which I'm not certain of, and then maybe refine his tail a little bit more. And of course, paint that gorgeous eye. So that's on my list of things to do once this first layer has dried. But I'm kind of happy with that. And maybe I'll have to do a wildlife painting course one day down the road. The obstacle is usually getting really good wildlife photos to use because I don't want to violate anyone's copyright by using photos I've just found at random places on the internet. I'm just going to switch the camera over one more time. I've set my system up. I upgraded my software so that I can actually share multiple screens with you now. So that's why you get a fancy title screen and me being able to share student work as well. So yeah, I just have a few more comments. I have Joanne mentions that she tried the indigo paper and didn't like it much coming from Arches. Joanne, I'd be curious as to which of the indigo papers you tried, because I've found that for myself, there's a big difference between the 300 pound and the lighter weights, the 140 pound. But again, it's really, for me, I love it because of the texture, the way the pigment granules sit in the little dimples in the paper. The dark paint is a Sodalite Genuine. I will link up to it in the description of the video after we wrap up here today. I want to thank you guys all for coming, and just thank you for being here today and participating. You guys are such a great audience, and reading all your comments. I wish I could keep up with them all and talk and paint at the same time. There's a limit to my multitasking. Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, different comments, different lists of paper to use, different suggestions. That's great to see. Again, just thank you everybody for joining me today. Do check out my online classes at learn.angelafair.com. And make sure in the links or in the description below, I do have different links that will be helpful for you for finding supplies or whatever. You can watch this video for the next week before I unlist it off my YouTube channel. And if you have the direct link, I think you should still be able to access it anytime. So hang on to that if you want to. I also have a link in the description for you to sign up for YouTube notifications so that I try to send out reminders a day before and an hour before I broadcast, although it's every Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And yeah, just thank you for joining us. We have been here 40 minutes, which is past my deadline that I wanted to set, but that's okay because we've had such a great time. We've done lots. We've talked. Hopefully you feel a little more confident about developing your personal style and just being willing to try different things and try to look for that internal connection when you make it, whether it's just a tiny little brush stroke that you love or a color that you gravitate towards. Little things like that can help you kind of start to identify and then look for opportunities to, connect with that little part of you that goes, yes, that's what I wanted to do. So have a great day. Again, happy Thanksgiving to all the Canadians who tuned in. And while the rest of you can be thankful anyhow. Have a great day.